What's up, folks? Welcome to a new video. Got this article today from the Mail Online. It's about Boris. He seems to have got some oomph behind him now. He's got a big majority. He's starting to throw his weight around a little bit. And with regards to the EU, of course, with this trade deal that we're supposedly negotiating within the next 11 months or so. As the article states, Britain will conduct post-Brexit trade talks with the US at the same time as it negotiates the terms of the UK's future relationship with the EU, Downing Street has signalled. The UK will split from Brussels on January the 31st, and then there will be a standstill transition period until the end of 2020, when the two sides will try to hammer out a trade deal. Number 10 said today that the UK will not just focus on discussing the future partnership with the EU after Brexit, because it will be free to hold trade discussions with countries across the world. The possibilities of the government engaging in tandem talks with the EU and the US will delight Tory Brexiteers. It will delight every Brexiteer. This is exactly what we wanted. You're going to put pressure on the EU. America are our second biggest trading partner. If we look like we're going to get a trade deal before the end of this year or somewhere close, even just being close to finishing it towards the end of this year, that will put pressure on the EU, because it will mean that we don't need them as much. We don't need the trade deal from them as much. We can just bide our time and wait, because we'll have a trade deal almost wrapped up with the US. And I'd imagine as soon as we got that, and if we didn't have that one with the EU finished yet, America would very quickly become our biggest trading partner. I'm 99% sure of that. They believe the potential for a swift free trade deal with the White House could stop the EU from dragging its feet on agreeing its own deal. Exactly. Brexiteers believe the leverage of the US trade talks will force the EU to pull out all the stops to agree a deal with the UK by the end of the year, or risk a better prepared Britain opting to walk away. They fear the EU could delay progress on talks in order to pressure Boris into breaking his promise not to extend the transition period, which would then likely require the UK to make further budget contributions. And I think that's exactly where these talks are going to go early on. If we're not already talking to the US, the EU will just look to put the buffers on without making too much of a fuss. Just try and get a little extension, because as soon as they've got Boris to break his word, then they've got sort of an in with people then, like, oh look, Boris has not actually kept to his word, we're going to have to extend, he was always wrong, blah blah blah. But if we're in negotiations with the US, they can't really stall that way. They can only stall on legitimate issues, which means they can't stall for long periods. So fingers crossed, this could be good news for us, because Donald Trump is the most pro-British president that there's been since probably Reagan. We need to take advantage of this. We really should take advantage of this. Sit down with them. I'd put more effort into the US trade deal than the EU, just to let the EU know that we're serious about getting this trade deal sorted with the US, and it should just shake the EU into action a bit more. We'll get a fairer deal. Asked if the US will conduct trade talks with the EU in tandem with trade talks with the US, the Prime Minister's official spokesman said, "Once we have left the EU on the 31st of January, we will be free to hold trade discussions with countries across the world and not just focus on discussing the future partnership with the EU." So hopefully that doesn't just mean the US then. Hopefully we'll reach out to them Commonwealth countries that were left behind in the 70s, because you've got countries like Australia and New Zealand and India that are very strong economies that we could probably very quickly wrap up a trade deal with as well, because we've had previous trading relationships with them. Of course, they've moved on in 25 years, but not everything's changed. Australia is still mining a hell of a lot. That is a lot of their exports. That's why they've not had a recession in 30 odd years, because a lot of theirs is mining, and it's gone to China, who have just grown exponentially over the last 30 years. Mr Johnson will meet von der Leyen, the new president of the European Commission, in Downing Street for talks on Wednesday. And how different's that? She's coming to Boris. We're not having to bugger off to Brussels like Theresa May did 64 times during her reign. She's coming to Boris. I think that's quite significant. The introductory meeting between the pair is likely to set the tone for the trade negotiations, which will then follow in the months to come. The PM is believed to want swift progress on the EU-UK trade deal. Downing Street today insisted its focus remained on hitting the end of 2020 deadline, which I'd be surprised if they got. I would be I will hold my hands up and say well done, Boris, if he did, because I would never believe that he'd get a trade deal done for end of 2020. Asked when Mr Johnson wanted intensive negotiations with Brussels to begin, the PM spokesman said, "Where mine should be focused is on the fact that the EU jointly agreed with the UK that it would do everything to conclude an ambitious future partnership by the end of 2020. The Prime Minister and the government could not be any clearer in its position that we will believe in the implementation period on December 2020. There will be no extension," which automatically puts pressure on the EU, because not just the EU, ourselves as well. Like, he's saying that we must get this done. There is no chance of an extension, which is kind of brave. It's very brave, considering how big this is and the fact that it's got to be ratified. I mean, the EU negotiates as one, but it still has to be individually ratified by each 27 other member states. So that's a lot of things to get through in just 11 months. Many EU figures believe it will not be possible to strike a full trade deal with the UK in such a short amount of time. Yeah, but that's not the point. Boris is just trying to get it as far as possible through until the end of 2020. If we only have to extend by a week or two just to get the last thing signed, I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. As long as the trade deal's there and it's all ready, it just needs to go through the legal processes. I don't think anybody would have a problem with that, because come January 31st, I think it's going to hit a lot of people that Brexit is going to happen now. Might not happen exactly the way you want it, but it's going to happen. Britain is firmly on course to split from Brussels after Mr Johnson won a massive Tory majority at the general election last month, and MPs gave their initial backing to his divorce accord. And that is the key to this whole thing. Boris has won the biggest majority since Thatcher, and that has just given him so much power that Theresa May didn't have. I sort of feel sorry for Theresa May a little bit because of the hand that she had, but she very much dealt that hand to herself, so not that much sympathy. But Boris has got something totally different. He has got so much more power than she had. I want to say all the power, but he hasn't got all the power. We do still need to trade with our closest trading partners. I would like to get this trade deal sorted out before we go. But he's just in such a stronger position now, and if he gets this US trade deal even 50% of the way through, if they know that a US trade deal is coming within the next couple of years, the EU, that means they're going to have to work faster. And I think this could work out very well for everybody. I think the EU will do well out of this. I think it'll knock down a few barriers between them and the US, and they'll stop being petty with each other and finally get their trade deal sorted out as well. And we won't have to be part of that because we're doing our own negotiating. But anyway, that's it for today, folks. If you enjoyed the video, stick a like on it. Take care.